You're welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning on Channels Television. Well, oil prices hit and then recoiled from highs last seen in October 2018 as investors eye the outcome of this week's OPEC Plus as the United States and Iran wrangle over the revival of a nuclear deal, delaying a surge in Iranian oil exports. Brent crude for August had slipped 16 cents to 76 cents to 76 $2 a barrel in early trade, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude for August was at $73.93 a barrel. That was down 12 cents. Oil prices rose for a fifth week last week as the fuel demand rebounded on strong economic growth and increased travel during summer in the Northern Hemisphere, while global crude supply stayed snug as OPEC and their allies maintain production costs. Well, how does this concern Nigeria? The Group Managing Director of Rain Oil Limited, Mr. Gabriel Ogbeche, joins us now to speak about that and other related issues. Good morning, Mr. Ogbeche. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Good to have you too. Well, Nigeria's oil export received from oil revenue, which slumped by 98% from March to April, is set for a rebound as OPEC has forecast demand to exceed 99 million barrels per day in the fourth quarter of 2021. This increase in price, now $76 plus, is a blessing to Nigeria?
Well, I would say it's a double-edged sword. Typically for a country that gets more than 90% of our foreign exchange earnings from the sale of crude oil, anytime we see the price of crude oil go this high, the country actually should be rejoicing. But on the flip side, unfortunately for a country that imports 100% of her petrol or gasoline needs, it becomes a cost on the other side, because when the price of crude oil goes up, it means that the cost of importing petrol into the country also goes up. And again, for a country that runs a fixed price for gasoline, where we sell petrol for 165 naira per liter, it means that that extra cost of importing the petrol, unfortunately, is borne by government. So when the price of crude oil goes up, the cost of subsidizing this petrol also go up, which is why today you see that the country is actually bleeding.
All right, sir, but how do you see, the price of oil going in the near future? Some have predicted $100 per barrel. What do you think?
Well, the immediate prediction is that crude oil should easily hit $80 a barrel. I'm not very optimistic about crude oil hitting $100 per barrel because of the interplay between the price of crude oil and the production of shale oil. We know too well that shale oil, which is largely produced in the US, the cost of producing it is very high. So once the price of crude oil hits $50, once the price of crude oil is below $50, then it doesn't make economic sense for those who produce shale oil. But once it goes above $50, then the production of shale oil quickly ramps up. So once you begin to see $80 a barrel, the interplay in the production of shale oil will now begin to put kind of a downward pressure on the price of crude oil. I don't share the optimism of anybody thinking that crude oil is going to hit $100 a barrel anytime soon.
Yeah, and with this increase in prices, landing costs also for petrol hit 232 naira, implying that the landing costs of PMS imported into the country has surged by more than 60% between December and mid-June this year. This brings, of course, the issue of subsidy, which you mentioned earlier, which is now placed at about 5.58 billion naira. For someone in your line of business, when you hear subsidy, talking of removing subsidy and, of course, the outcry that goes with it because of the possibility of an increase in petrol price at the pump, what does it mean to you as a marketer?
Well, for us, it doesn't exactly augur well for the industry. It doesn't augur well for the country. I recall about this time last year when the price of crude oil, at the heat of the COVID-19 lockdown, when the price of crude oil came as low as $15 a barrel, subsidy naturally disappeared, so much so that government brought down the price of petrol from 145 naira per liter to 125 naira per liter, and actually came out to say that subsidy was gone for good, because ideally, I don't think it's right for us to be subsidizing petrol. But between then and now, I mean, we saw the price of crude oil recover very gradually, and government now increased the price of petrol from 125 naira to 142 naira to 162 naira to 165, which we see today. But again, the price of crude oil kept increasing. That today, crude oil is trading for $76 per barrel, and then the cost of bringing in petrol into the country today is about 256 naira per liter. So ideally today, I can argue that government is subsidizing every single liter of petrol by as much as 90 naira per liter. I mean, for a country whose consumption, today we are seeing consumption, daily consumption of about 80 million liters per day. So it means that today, government is practically subsidizing petrol alone for as much as close to 8 billion naira every day. So we are looking at an expenditure of 240 billion naira every month just to subsidize one product called petrol. I don't think it's sustainable. I don't think we should continue in this direction. And I think that it doesn't augur well for the industry. It's not good for investments. And I also think that it doesn't augur well for the country from an economic point of view.
Okay, but how do we convince the people? Because each time the issue of removing subsidy comes up, it doesn't go down well with Nigerians. And I mean, for good reasons also, because the promise of subsidizing other parts of life hasn't really come through in the past. So people do not really trust the government when they say that they want to remove the subsidy and use the money for some other things. So how do we convince the people that there's really the need to remove this subsidy for a better future in the country?
Well, I think it's a matter of engagement. I need to see a more robust engagement in terms of trying to argue the fact that subsidy should not be there in the first place, or that subsidy should be removed. Unfortunately, from an industry point of view, I am not seeing that engagement. So it is what it is. There is subsidy in the price of petroleum products. I mean, everybody who drives into a fuel station, just imagine that when you drive into a fuel station to buy fuel and you buy 50 liters of fuel, as you're parting with 8,000 naira to the pump attendant, just imagine that government is standing beside you and also parting with 5,000 naira to that same pump attendant to actually make the full cost of the petrol you have just bought. Now, just imagine that government has 240 billion naira every month to spend. Now, the argument will be, what is the best way to spend that money? Do we spend that money just to subsidize one product called petrol? Or do we spend that money on other sectors of the economy, like education, for example, like health, like infrastructure, like railway? I mean, there are so many other areas of the economy where government can deploy that humongous amount of money rather than channeling it to subsidizing one product. And I will give you an example. I mean, you look at education, for example. The public schools have practically collapsed, so much so that even the people at the lower rung of the economic ladder, everybody wants to send their children to private schools. And then look at how much people are paying just to send their children to private primary schools or private secondary schools. People pay as much as ₦1 million per term or ₦1 million per annum sending their children to private secondary schools. Now, just imagine that government channels this kind of money to fixing our public schools, so much so that no matter where you are on the economic ladder, you feel comfortable enough to send your children to public primary schools, public secondary schools. So instead of we thinking that we are saving money on petrol, we can actually save money on education and spend the money on petrol. I mean, if you look at the country as a whole, infrastructure has practically collapsed. I mean, I stay in Lagos and I ask myself, why can't we have a high-speed railway line from Lagos to Abuja, for example? Why can't we have a high-speed railway line from Lagos to Enugu, for example? Why can't we have a shuttle going from Lagos to Abuja, and a high-speed train leaving every hour? How much does it cost? If you look at how much we spend on subsidizing petrol alone, if we aggregate that money in 1 year, I'm sure it will give us a high-speed train line from Lagos to Abuja. Right. So, I mean, you look at the seaports, the entire country is relying on Tinkan Port or an Apapa Port, and these are ports that were built more than 40 years ago. Why can't we build additional seaports? I mean, when I look at the coastline in Nigeria, we have the Atlantic Ocean going from, the Atlantic Ocean goes from Lagos through Ogun to Ondo, to Edo, to Delta, to Bayelsa Rivers, Akwa Ibom to Cross River. More than 400 nautical miles of coastline. Yet the entire country is relying on the seaports in Lagos with all the congestion and so there's so much other areas where we can deploy this kind of money rather than using subsidized.
Okay. So the NNPC has said that petrol, smuggling persists, and the NNPC also talked about, volume of consumption pegged at 102 million liters consumed in May, but in reality, it should be about 60 million. How worried should we be about smuggling?
Of course, everybody is worried about it, but again, it's understandable. When you look at Nigeria in the middle, just look at Nigeria in the middle, the price of petrol in Nigeria is, say, 165 naira per liter. But when you look at Benin Republic to the west of Nigeria, the price of petrol in Benin Republic is 377 naira per liter. If you go further west, in Togo, the price of petrol is 377 naira per liter. In Chad, to the north, is 387 naira per liter. In Ghana, further west, is 446 naira per liter. If you go to Cameroon, to the east, it's 470 naira per liter. So the point is that all the countries that surround Nigeria, the price of petrol in each of those countries is more than twice the price of petrol in Nigeria. So there is so much incentive for leakage, which is why today, very unfortunately, Nigeria fuel not only feeds Nigeria, but it also leaks, I dare say, into the neighboring countries around Nigeria. And this is all because of the huge price disparity between Nigeria and the neighboring countries. I don't believe that that's the right and proper thing.
So you think
the federal government of Nigeria...
So you think that if this price is being, if it's covered, this gap between the two prices, if it's covered, then it will make smuggling not so attractive?
Oh, definitely, definitely. We've seen it before. In 2016, if I recall correctly, the first time we saw the price of crude oil collapse, when the price of crude oil collapsed and subsidy naturally disappeared, and we achieved what I call the import parity. So in other words, the cost of bringing in petrol kind of matched the pump price and there was no subsidy. We also saw that the national consumption went down to as low as 40 million liters per day. Today we are consuming about 80 million liters per day. I don't think that Nigerian fuel consumption should be more than 50 million liters per day. And I think that at least 30 million liters of Nigeria fuel leaks out of this country on a daily basis, trying to feed the neighboring countries.
All right, we have to stop it there, Mr. Ubeche. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Mr. Ubeche, Gabriel Ubeche is the GMD of Rain Oil Limited, and he shared his thoughts with us on happenings in his industry. Do enjoy the rest of your day, Mr. Ubeche.
Thank you very much.
So we do an open call to the market, and Will Ibong is here. Will, last week, the total volume of transaction carried out in the investors and experts window of the Forex market rose by over 25%. Tell us the details.
Good morning, Nini. Yes, it was a good run for the Forex markets as sports, forwards and futures in the week ended June 25 had a total turnover of about $808.02 million. This figure represents a 38.39%